My sincere apologies that I'm unable to be with you all in person. The Trump administration has unleashed a terrifying campaign of abductions, deportation, and repression against the anti war movement and arrested and have detained Palestinian anti war activist and Columbia University graduate student Mahmoud Khalil. They also abducted Tufts University Turkish immigrant student Rumeysa Öztürk and have canceled her student visa and detained her. Similarly, Georgetown University professor and Indian immigrant Badr Khan Suri has been abducted and detained. The list of names is ominously growing longer. Many have watched the chilling video footage of the abductions. Masked officials literally grabbing people off the streets or from outside their homes. Trump's Secretary of State, arch neocon Marco Rubio, recently gave a chilling speech, effectively asserting that those on a visa or with a green card have no freedom of speech. This is extremely dangerous, and we must urgently fight back, as my organization, Workers Strike Back, is doing. We need to fight back in solidarity with all those under attack and recognize that if we don't build an effective resistance, it will only embolden Trump and the right wing to go further. We should have no illusions that they won't also come after foreign born, naturalized US citizens. They've already indicated as much. In reality, they'll come for all of us unless we fight back and defeat them. For the anti war movement in the United States to be able to fight Trump and put a stop to the abductions, deportations, and repression, lesson number one is that we cannot rely in any way on the Democratic Party. Under Biden, more than 3,000 anti war protesters were arrested, the largest attack on campus protesters in the United States since 1968. And now, the Democrats in the US Congress are not even pretending to stand with anti war activists threatened with deportation. The genocide on Gaza itself and the brutal repression of anti war movements was started by Biden and the Democrats, which helped pave the way for Trump to win the election last year. Even in the final weeks of the Biden Harris administration, the Democrats worked hard to send every last dollar they could for both the genocide in Gaza and the bloody inter imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. Carrying out war abroad and repressing anti war activists at home has been a long term joint project of the Republicans and the Democrats. Similarly, in Canada, as you know, we have seen the Liberals under Justin Trudeau support the agenda of Western imperialism with the genocide in Gaza. A new record was set in 2023 for Canadian military exports to Israel, with $30.6 million worth of goods shipped. Trudeau's personal downfall comes as a consequence not only of his and the liberal support of the wars in Gaza and Ukraine, but also of them selling out the Canadian working people as the Democratic Party did here. People who are angry at the cost of living crisis, the war, and ongoing attacks on the services they rely on will look for alternatives. That's how Trump came back to power, and that's how right wing parties around the world are gaining momentum. In BC, 49% of people believe they will go deeper into debt to pay their expenses. It's in this context of falling living standards that a dangerous right wing politician like Pierre Poilievre has alarmingly gained unprecedented ground. And the truth is that regardless of who wins the Canadian federal government elections next month, there will be more and more of an opening to the right wing unless there is a working class fight back in Canada. In Canada, as in the United States, working people need a new party, a party that will fight unambiguously for them, not the rich. The NDP and before it, the CCF, did play a very important historical role, but the NDP has become far too complicit in the neoliberal agenda, as have the progressives in the Democratic Party in the US. We are seeing the growth of the right wing, which works hand in hand with the billionaire class in most nations across the world. In India, the extreme right wing Hindu fundamentalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party have the strong support of Indian billionaires like Mukesh Ambani and Gautam Adani. Modi has for years been ramping up repression of activists fighting against economic exploitation, Islamophobia, and caste oppression. As you know all too well, the Modi government has also brought its attacks overseas, as we saw with the brutal assassination of and threats of assassination against Sikh community members in Canada and the United States. The Modi regime has denied visas or revoked visas and residency rights of over 100 activists, including recently myself. My visa to India has been denied 3 times, even though my elderly mother is in very frail health and I have been informed that my name is on a blacklist. Over a century ago, on the eve of World War I, thousands of American anti war activists were persecuted and imprisoned for speaking out against the war. A war that ended up slaughtering about 20 million people, a war driven purely by the competition of different imperialist powers over colonies and resources and the desire of the capitalists to maximize their profits. One of those protesters was sentenced to 10 years in prison by a Democratic president for nothing more than giving an anti war speech. That anti war activist was the great American socialist Eugene Debs, and the Democratic president who sent him to prison was warmonger Woodrow Wilson. Some of you may know, I've heard about Debs. He ran for president 5 times as the candidate of the US Socialist Party, and the last time he ran was from a prison cell. So while what's happening today is horrific, Trump's extreme attacks on the anti war movement are unfortunately not new. Now, as it was then, our only protection is our solidarity and the strength of our movement. That is why we need to build a far more powerful and highly organized anti war movement completely independent of capitalist parties, an international anti war movement. Whether we are fighting against imperialist war or for working class needs or against oppression, our movements simply cannot afford to have a nationalist outlook. Nationalism and the blind obedience the billionaires like to call patriotism are the tools of the capitalists to divide working people in one nation against another, of one race against another. We need to be clear. Working people and oppressed people internationally have only one enemy: the rich, their political servants, and their system of capitalism. We need to build a movement of workers, students, people of all nationalities, religions, and of all genders. A movement that rejects all the divisions fostered by identity politics, that understands that the political parties of the ruling class are our enemy, that fights to end the wars of imperialism by uniting on a principled working class basis, and a working class movement that fights unitedly against all forms of oppression and racism. A movement that can frighten the political establishment and the ruling class in the way that Eugene Debs and the socialist movement did in the wake of the 1917 working class Russian Revolution. The way that the anti Vietnam War movement did when they brought down American President Richard Nixon. Today's anti war and labor movements need to bring down Trump. We need to bring down Trump, the billionaires, the Republican and Democratic parties in the United States, and the billionaire parties in other countries, and this whole rotten system. The Vietnam War was started by Democrats and then escalated by Nixon and his fellow Republicans. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Both the Democrats and the Republicans have blood dripping off them. It is our blood, the blood of working people and the oppressed. Democratic President Wilson used an anti war speech made by Eugene Debs as a pretext to lock Debs up. It was an important speech, which is why the ruling class went after him. In that speech, Debs said, "Every solitary one of these aristocratic conspirators and would be murderers claims to be an arch patriot. Every one of them insists that the war is being waged to make the world safe for democracy. What humbug, what rot, what false pretense! These autocrats, these tyrants, these red handed robbers and murderers, the patriots, while the men who have the courage to stand face to face with them, speak the truth, and fight for their exploited victims, they are called the disloyalists and traitors. If this be true, I want to take my place side by side with the traitors in this fight." That's what Debs said. And so do I. I think That is the duty of every one of us today, to stand on the side of those being called criminals or traitors for fighting against the genocide of the Palestinian people. Debs also said in that speech, there is something splendid, something sustaining and inspiring in the prompting of the heart to be true to yourself and to the best you know, especially in a crucial hour of your life. You are in the crucible today, my socialist comrades. You are going to be tried by fire. To what extent, no one knows. We today are also going to be tried by fire, and the future of humanity itself will depend on what we decide to do, because we live in an era of war. These current wars are just the beginning, because the crisis of capitalism is only going to get worse. And alongside it is an environmental catastrophe that threatens the continuation of human civilization. The climate crisis will drive more social crises and conflict, and wars in turn will drive more environmental devastation. Humanity and the planet need a way out. My organization, Workers Strike Back, is fighting for a way out. I hope you will consider joining us. Thank you so much for your graciousness today. I truly wish I had been able to be with you in person. Solidarity.